Halo Infinite is launching later this year in 2020 as the Xbox Series X launch title, but it's also releasing on the Xbox One family of consoles. With that, I'd like to take a look back at the previous release that 343 had in Halo 5. I'd like to start this video off by saying that if you enjoy Halo 5, then I am happy for you. Halo 5 is not a game that I particularly like, and we're about to dig into why. But I think that everybody can agree that if this game had been designed and didn't look, sound, or was placed in a Halo setting, there's nothing in this game that would lead you to believe that it was supposed to be a sequel to the Halo franchise. Halo 5 is fundamentally different in every single gameplay way than the original titles that came before it that were released by Bungie. Now, I am all for innovating, I'm all for keeping a franchise relevant, but the way that 343 went about it was the wrong way. Now, in no particular order, we're going to go ahead and kick off the 25 reasons why I hate Halo 5. First things first, we're going to talk about the time to kill. Now, the time to kill in the multiplayer has been drastically reduced from the previous releases in the franchise. A game that was once about accuracy and gun skill has now turned into basically who sees who first, and am I going to get lucky enough to jump jet away and fall down a chute and be able to sprint away from my opponent when in trouble. When in the previous titles, even if you were the first person to shoot at somebody, that didn't guarantee you a kill in the encounter. If you missed a shot, or if the other player that you were fighting against was able to maneuver their character in a way that caused you to miss shots, to not be able to get close enough to get in a melee, or was able to somehow avoid a grenade that you've thrown at them, they could kill you, and you weren't limited just by who saw who first. Grenades in Halo 5 are pretty much rendered a moot point and are kind of fundamentally broken. Let me give you a scenario. In Halo 3, you're running around a corner, you see somebody coming up a lift behind you, you throw a grenade at a wall near you, it bounces off the wall, lands behind you, hits the both of you, but hits the guy that is chasing you enough so that you can turn around real fast and shoot him in the head with the battle rifle, and now he's dead. Looking at this same scenario when it comes to Halo 5, you throw the grenade at the wall, it bounces off the wall, and it goes completely in the opposite direction. You throw a grenade, it hits the wall, and then it bounces over the guy's head and explodes and doesn't hurt him whatsoever. You throw a grenade at the wall, it bounces off, the guy sees it, turns around, and sprints out of the way. Grenades are pretty much not a viable option when it comes to the three pillars that Bungie set up when it came to weapons, grenades, and melee. The simple fact of the matter is grenades have absolutely no weight to them. When you throw them, they bounce off of walls and the floor and the ceiling entirely too far. Let's talk about the multiplayer map design for just a moment. 343 Industries is not good at designing maps for Halo. And this comes down to the simple fact that I don't think they've really ever understood exactly what makes map design good. Even going back to a lot of the maps that they designed that were implemented into Halo Reach aren't very good. And having all those games in the collection with Bungie's design and then contrasting that directly next to 343's is clearly the inferior map design. And that shines through so much in Halo 5. None of the maps in Halo 5 are memorable. The only one that can come to my mind right away when I think of maps is the Halo 5 Midship remake, and even that is grossly misrepresented from what it originally was. The level is stretched out, the lanes are stretched out, things are made basically to accommodate the new abilities that the Spartans have. And while I can kind of appreciate the simple fact that they tried to build maps around these new abilities themselves, and I guess we'll move right into the next point, the abilities themselves don't work with Halo. There's sprint, ground pound, thrust, the hover jets, and the aim down sights. Now, again, like I said previously, I can understand them wanting to improve the game, wanting to make it their own, and also wanting to keep the game relevant at a time back in 2015 when the super fast-paced, high-mobility shooters were a thing. The simple fact of the matter is these don't work with Halo. Ground pound, I hardly ever use. Shoulder charge is a ability that a lot of the people in the community that I've spoken with absolutely revile when it comes to multiplayer. It's essentially almost a free kill, whether you're running into somebody from the front or the side. You hit them once and then you shoot them once in the face, and that interaction is pretty much basically unavoidable. Playing the game recently, I've tried to use the thruster to get out of the way. I've tried to use the thruster to back up when someone tries to shoulder charge into me. And the shoulder charge has an insane amount of auto-targeting range, so that if you're even remotely near someone and you hit that, you'll fly into them whether they're trying to move out of the way or not. And I've seen it to where the game will actually steer you into the other player. The hover jets, when you're using them, just make you a target. You basically stand out like a sore thumb, someone saying, "Here, shoot me, please." And while we're on the topic of aim down sights, not every single weapon needs it. Again, I feel that this was just implemented to try to keep the game modern, which again is fine, and I expect some weapons to have scopes, like the sniper rifle, like the battle rifle, like the DMR, but the assault rifle absolutely did not need an aim down sight in the way that it was implemented. And some of the worst scopes in the game are attached to the Covenant Carbine. The default blue is absolutely terrible, and when the lighting hits it in certain levels and in certain conditions, it almost makes the scope unusable because you can't even see through it because the light shines that blue up and puts a heavy filter over it and just makes it almost impossible to see through and impossible to aim with. Now let's go ahead and talk about that controller configuration. We're going to talk about the default controller. Halo 1 and Halo 2 pretty much set the standard with the Xbox controller for what a controller button layout should be like. The A button jumps, the X button reloads, the B button is the melee, the Y button changes your weapon, and then of course you've got the right trigger fires, left trigger throws grenade, and then when the LB and RB were added in, it became the melee and then the ability button. Now, originally with Halo 1 and 2, games tried to emulate their controller style for years. Now, once Call of Duty came along and Halo adopted a more Call of Duty-like control scheme, I felt that that kind of worked. It was pretty similar to its original, but Halo 5's control scheme is absolutely ridiculous. A lot of times when playing the game, I end up switching the Halo 5 control scheme back to the Halo 4 one, which is essentially the Call of Duty control scheme as well. The abilities don't map to the default controller in a way, for me as a longtime Halo player, that makes any sense whatsoever. The game has as its default too many important functions that don't map to the most comfortable positions on the controller. So the default controls for Halo 5 are A jumps, B is the thrusting, Y changes the gun, X reloads and picks up weapons, and then of course you have the left trigger is the aim down sights, the right trigger is the fire, the LB is throwing grenades, and the RB is the melee. Now, in a perfect scenario for you, when picking up the sniper rifle in Halo 5, you pull the left trigger to bring up the scope, and then you click the left stick in to zoom again. This is exactly the opposite of what a lot of Halo players are used to. A lot of Halo players are just used to clicking the right stick in a couple of times to change in between the different zoom levels. Now, looking a little bit back into the history of the controller, they actually had to have patches that came out to modify the controller and to make it feel a little bit more like Halo. Now, something that I didn't realize back in the day when playing on the original Xbox and an Xbox 360, the X and Y axis vertices with the sensitivities for Halo are what felt good, but I didn't know why until just recently. So when you look at the default controls for Halo 5, looking up and down is faster than looking left to right. And that is actually the exact opposite of what Bungie established in the previous games. Looking left and right was always faster, and looking up and down was a little bit slower. This just goes to show you right away, by default, that 343 doesn't know what makes Halo feel good to play. Now let's go ahead and talk about what I feel might be one of the most fundamental pillars to the Halo multiplayer experience, and that is the radar. The radar range in Halo 5 is pitifully short. It was a little bit shorter in the original Halo game, Halo Combat Evolved, and looking at Halo CE multiplayer in the Master Chief Collection, the radar's actually been disabled, and the reason for that being is the simple fact of the matter is that the multiplayer maps, for the majority of them, are really short, and that 15 meters pretty much covers the entire map. So to give everyone kind of a fair advantage, they just shut the radar off. That is not the case with Halo 5. Halo 5's multiplayer, the radar is so short-ranged in this, but the simple fact too is highly inconsistent. Depending on what game mode you play on, the radar range changes. When playing Big Team Battle, I've seen the radar range go all the way up to 40 meters. When playing Firefight mode, it is 50 meters. When playing Big Team Battle, it's 25. It's highly inconsistent, and it never seems to be set at a distance that would actually let you see someone who's relatively close to you shooting you with whatever weapon they have. And I feel that this is done to accommodate a casual player and maybe put them on a somewhat level playing field with somebody who has been playing first-person shooters or Halo for a really long time. Because obviously, if you can't see who's shooting you in what direction, even if they're relatively close to you, chances are you're not going to live through that encounter. Now, of course, the one thing that has been impacted by the enhanced movement speeds is the bullet magnetism. What is bullet magnetism? Well, it is the gun's ability to hit somebody even though their targeting reticule may or may not be on the exact spot. So if you're shooting towards somebody's head, as long as the gun is in that general direction, the bullets will move to their head or their body or wherever you have pointed. And the reason for this being is the simple fact of the matter is that if this high level of bullet magnetism didn't exist, that means that nobody would ever hit anybody when it came to shooting unless they were basically running dead onto them, due to the simple fact of the high speeds. The Promethean weapons are some of the worst weapons in any first-person shooter game that I have ever used. They weren't that good in Halo 4, and they really don't have any improvements over Halo 5. I understand why they exist. I understand that they're there to show what the Prometheans fought with. And to be honest, I would have been happy or fine with the simple fact that they disintegrated along with them. But the fact that these weapons are also in the campaign and the multiplayer really just shows how well they don't fit in the Halo sandbox. The weapons that they have are either already done with a human weapon like the shotgun and the grenade launcher, or the carbine rifle, or the DMR, or the battle rifle, or just name another Halo weapon. They are bad versions of weapons that already exist. And while we are on the topic of weapon designs, a lot of the UNSC weapon designs kinda aren't very good. When I first saw the battle rifle, my favorite weapon in Halo, the holographic scope on the top, as soon as I saw that, I was immediately like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. This looks ridiculous. This is not Halo. This does not fit with the Halo aesthetic. Now in Halo 4, they kind of just put a square scope on the top and called it a day. And they also redesigned the way the weapon looked a little bit, and I was okay with that. I liked that design. But the battle rifle in Halo 5 is disgusting, and I know that it exists the way that it does so that they can add new weapons in and new scopes for it and different modes. But just a lot of these weapons, not only are they generic, they just don't fit in the Halo universe. While we're talking about design, let's go ahead and talk about Cortanas Design for Halo 5. From the neck down, I think she looks okay. The battle armor looks kind of cool. She kind of looks like a real world person, not like a computer hologram that she's supposed to be, the AI. So I feel like they could have done a better job in representing the simple fact that she's not an actual physical thing. But from the face up, I don't know what is wrong with her. She just looks off to me. It looks like somebody's bad Tumblr art that they did. In the previous games, Cortana went through a gradual refinement when the way she looked. And that was just due to the fact that they were getting more powerful consoles so they could give more detail in the face. And I think Halo 4 is probably the best representation, maybe outside of Halo 2 Anniversary's blur cutscenes, which I feel should be the default and it should be the standard that they go for when it comes to design for her. But yeah, something about her face, it just looked off. And maybe that was the point because she's, spoiler, the villain. But I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. While being on the topic of design still, what is wrong with the Spartan character designs for multiplayer, the armors that you unlock, the helmets that you unlock. I understand the fact that it's hard to design hundreds and hundreds of different styles when it comes to stuff to have in your game to unlock. But the simple fact of the matter is a lot of these armors don't even look like they fit within the Halo universe. They look like they're ripped straight out of Power Rangers. And a lot of them are the same helmet or the same chest piece with just a variation of the way that the colors sit on the armor. And to me, that just seems kind of lazy. But again, I think it's because they tried to change the art style. They changed the way the armor looks. So they were trying to go for, I don't even know what kind of aesthetic. But whatever it is, it just absolutely does not fit. A lot of the armors do not fit with the Halo universe. So the next thing I'd like to move into is the Req system and the unlocking, and touch on a little bit of Warzone because all three of these are related. The Req system was designed specifically for the Warzone mode, and the Warzone mode was designed specifically for the Req system, and with those two modes tied closely to each other, they pretty much tried to build a way to extract as much money from you, the customer, as possible. Unfortunately, they also locked cosmetics behind this as well. And not just the cosmetics, but a heavy level of customization from emblems and symbols to calling cards and assassinations. Nobody wants this type of system in Halo Infinite. I feel like nobody wanted this system in Halo 5. If you're going to have us unlock customization and unlock specific things for the characters, we all want it through gameplay. Something similar to Halo Reach, and luckily enough 343 has listened and said that the unlocking system or the cosmetic system for Halo Infinite is going to be heavily inspired by Halo Reach. While being on the topic of Warzone and Warzone Firefight, those two game modes are grossly imbalanced. I've played a good 3 to 4 hours of Warzone Firefight, and not once have I actually won a match with the team that I've been matched up with. And it starts off fine enough, but the further into the more aggressive waves, the more difficulties that you get into as the mode progresses, it becomes incredibly hard to play. The enemies are super bullet spongy. You yourself have a very low amount of ammo, which is, again, I guess going to go into the next thing that I'd like to talk about too. You do not have enough ammo for your guns in almost any game mode. In campaign and Warzone Firefight, aside from Warzone Firefight and Warzone being grossly unbalanced, you don't have enough ammo. You're constantly forced to switch between weapons, and while sure this will encourage experimentation, maybe you'll use a weapon that you'd never thought of using before, if you have a gun that you're using, especially in a firefight mode, and you're consistently running out of ammo, and not only just running out of ammo, but wasting almost entire clips, if not more, on one enemy, and because that enemy is super bullet spongy, you're forced to drop a weapon and pick one up on the fly that is significantly more impactful than the one that you have. This becomes a problem, and not only does this happen in Warzone Firefight, this happens in the campaign. Just let me use the weapon that I want to use. Stop forcing me to switch weapons and to use guns, especially the Promethean weapons, when those guns are garbage. One of the things that I feel was grossly misoverlooked when it came to Halo 5 was the design of the Prometheans and the way that it contrasts against the Promethean art style and the Forerunner art style and levels in the game. There's a very specific level, one of the only ones that you play as is the Master Chief, called the Breaking. It's towards the end of the game, and it's basically just a straight run from point A to point B, and you have to kill all these enemies along the way. The only problem is the Promethean enemies blend into the Forerunner architecture. They're the same color, they have the same shading, and a lot of times, you can kind of notice them because they have little lights on them. Sometimes you'll misoverlook something and you won't notice it, or you'll be running through, and especially when playing this on a harder difficulty, which isn't very well balanced as well, you're going to get sniped a lot from areas that you didn't know enemies were in because they blend into the background. Moving on to the last few things that I have here on my list, the rotating playlists for multiplayer. Just leave the matchmaking alone. Let people play what they want to play. Stop removing people's favorite game types and putting in different ones. I understand that you guys do this to have the playlist consolidated so that the matchmaking wait times aren't super long with the fan base spread out across multiple different types of games. But the simple fact of the matter is people like to play what they like to play. Don't mess with it. The ranking system for the multiplayer, the SR ranking system, that doesn't need to be there. Bring back the 1 through 50, the official 1 through 50 ranking system. The Forge maps for multiplayer, look, the community, while being great in some aspects, not everyone is a good map designer, and this is obvious by the maps they put in. Not all of these maps are good, and honestly, graphically, they look like Lego sets. Forced co-op campaign has to go, and I believe they've said that this isn't going to be in Halo Infinite, so that is something that I am happy to hear. The main character being switched to Locke, look, I would have been happy and okay with it if the Master Chief had an equal amount of time in the game. The simple fact of the matter is they didn't do anything worthwhile in making Locke a character that I even really cared about, and that goes to the nonsense story. At this point in the Halo timeline, the Master Chief should basically just be looked at and pretty much worshipped when it comes to the UNSC. Anything that the chief says should go. And the simple fact of the matter is that they kept him in the story as a soldier to serve, not as a general, not even as an advocate or someone that they could talk to in trying to figure out certain situations and how to handle them. And the fact that Chief would even be considered to be a bad guy in this by the UNSC is absolutely ridiculous. And as a bonus, the limited offline functionality is terrible. All you have access to is the main campaign. You don't have any access to co-op because there's no split screen. You don't have any access to custom games because there's no split screen. And they have said that they are adding in split screen to all the future Halo titles. So it's good that they've listened to the community with that aspect. But this is the 25 reasons why I hate Halo 5. Now, again, if you enjoy this game, more power to you. I'm happy that you have a game that you can play and enjoy. But as a longtime Halo fan myself, Halo 5 came with a lot of baggage and a lot of expectations that I had that were not met. That being said, if I missed something or you guys think I'm wrong, please feel free to let me know in the comments section down below. If you're new around here and you want to be part of the conversation, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to check out the links in the description. I have my social media and my Discord there. All of them are free to follow and join. And until next time, everyone, thank you all for joining me here today, and I'll see all of you in the next video.